Hello, welcome to today's Daily Dose. Each of us has a story. It's a story of our lives, and each of our stories is different. No two people have the same story. And God has a story. It is written into the fabric of the universe and is revealed through His Word. The question for each of us is, how does my story fit into this big picture? Because our story will only make sense as it becomes part of God's story. So how can my story, your story, become part of God's story? I think we can get a perspective on this by talking about a game. It's a game that we have probably all played at one time or another. It's the game called Rock, Paper, Scissors. Leonard Sweet calls this game a game of life. In this game, each gesture has a meaning, a function, and a consequence. Scissors cuts paper. Paper covers rock, and rock breaks scissors. Sin is our scissors. Our lives, our stories are rock, our paper rather, and Jesus is the rock. Sin is our scissors. Our lives, our stories are paper, and Jesus is the rock. Keep these in mind because the most important journey we make in life is from sin to salvation. The journey of paper from scissors to rock. Sin is our scissors. We warn our children, don't run with scissors. Scissors are dangerous. They're sharp. They can cut and jab like sin. Basically, sin is not the breaking of a moral code. It's the tearing of a relationship. The scissors of sin separate, and they separate us from God. The prophet Isaiah said, "But your iniquities have separated you from your God, and your sins have hidden His face from you so that He will not hear." That is separation from God. When we are separated from God, our lives become dysfunctional. Sin slices and dices up our lives until we become just shreds of our real selves. Relationships with others get messed up because scissors cut paper. Our lives, our stories. We are created in the image of God, and an aspect of that image is the power to create, to build, to construct. And we have used that power to construct scissors. God does not use the scissors to cut up our lives. We do that ourselves because we take control of our lives and try to make ourselves into the image that we want rather than the image that God intended us to have. We try to do life on our own, shaping our own lives, and we become people of the scissors. And we soon discover that the scissors are stronger than we are, cutting up our lives and slicing and dicing the lives of people around us. But paper can be double-sided. It can be turned up. Our lives can be turned upward to write the story of Jesus, or they can be turned downward to write another story. God created us with a blank page, if you please, on which we get to write the story of our lives. I'm Cherokee. When the Cherokee people saw the white man writing squiggles on sheets of paper, they called them talking leaves. Talking leaves. Each of us is a talking leaf. We can write the story, our own story in our own way, ignoring the God who made us, and therefore get the page wrinkled and smudged and cut up. Or we can write the Jesus story, the story God intended us to write and created us to write. Just as no two leaves are the same, no two stories are the same. We all have our own story. But the great thing is, if we choose to write the Jesus story, each of us can become a fifth gospel. There would be the gospel, therefore, of Matthew, Mark, Luke, John, and you. We each continue the Jesus story on the pages of our own lives until our stories become a special edition fifth gospel, the story of Jesus translated into our lives. The story of talking leaves goes back to the garden. What started out as a beautiful story of relationship between the divine and the human was torn, and the relationship was broken. So we use our paper, our leaves, to declare our independence from God, like Adam and Eve, who after their sin and disobedience hid from God. We use our paper to hide from God. Toddlers think that if they turn their backs, we can't see what they're doing. We do much the same when we turn our backs and try to hide our lives, our stories from God. People hide from God in a number of ways. Some use religion with its legalities and rules and regulations. Some use the church, immersing themselves in the activities and programs of the church, keeping busy in order to keep from allowing God to truly deal with their lives. For some, it's TV, or eating, or working, or shopping, or the internet. All kinds of activities to hide from God. But we greatly underestimate the all-encompassing love, mercy, and grace of God. Paper covers rock. We can do that. We can cover the image of God in our lives and erase Jesus' face from our stories. But when we do that, we allow sin to shred our lives and tear us to pieces. You see, when the hand covers the rock, it means separation. As long as we turn from God, we will never break the cycle of sin and separation. Only Jesus can break that cycle. When we allow Jesus to write his story on our pages, open and clear for all to see, he'll break the power of the scissors, and we'll become all we hope to be, because rock breaks scissors. Jesus is the living rock, the rock of ages, the rock of our salvation. The Apostle Paul said in 1 Corinthians chapter 10, and all drank the same spiritual rock. He's speaking of the people of Israel in their journey through the wilderness, but spiritually, it's our journey. He said, for they drank of that spiritual rock that followed them, and that rock was Christ. He is our provider, our strength. Jesus is the rock. Only he can break the power of sin in our lives and bring us into a vital, living, life-transforming relationship with God. The symbol of the rock is a fist, a hand that is strong and yet that opens to take the paper. When we allow the paper, our lives, to be picked up by the rock, we allow the power of the rock to take control of our lives and begin his transforming work in our lives. In other words, we allow him to begin writing his story on our lives. And the amazing, wonderful thing is, his image actually begins to be formed in us. The beauty of the rock is that the rock becomes our new identity, the one that God intended for us. Like Simon, who was renamed Peter, Rock, we would say Rocky, by Jesus. Each of us becomes a Rocky, the image of Christ formed in us and in our story, and our story becomes God's story. So, come to the rock. Trust him. Receive him. Follow him. Begin the journey. Write a new story, the Jesus story, on your life. Let your story, your talking leaf, become God's story. So have a good day. God bless you.